There is a woman in your neighborhood. You've seen her walking her dog on Tuesday mornings. She wears the same running shoes she's had for 3 years. She buys her coffee at home. Her kitchen is clean and modest, and her car is a silver Honda CR-V with 140,000 miles on it. She works in consulting, but you don't know her exact income, and she never brings it up. What you also don't know is that she has been quietly putting away between 40 and 60% of her income for 11 years. Her investment accounts have crossed $2 million. She owns 2 rental properties, both fully paid off. She could stop working tomorrow, and her finances wouldn't notice for decades. She is not exceptional. She didn't inherit a fortune. She didn't found a startup or win anything. And she simply made a series of decisions that most people around her chose not to make, and she made them consistently over a long enough period of time that the math became impossible to ignore. This is the reality of what wealth actually looks like for the vast majority of people who have it. Not yachts, not watches, not a personality built around consumption, a quiet, unspectacular life that is also, by most meaningful measures, completely free. My name is Mark, and today I'm going to walk you through 9 specific habits that quietly separate people who are building real wealth from those who look wealthy but aren't. These aren't abstract concepts. They are concrete, observable behaviors. Once you learn to recognize them, you'll start to see them everywhere. And more importantly, you'll understand why each one matters more than it looks. Before we get into it, hit subscribe if you want more content like this. Now let's get into the first one. Habit 1. They think in decades, not months. The most consistent difference between people who build serious wealth and those who don't isn't income. It isn't intelligence, it's time horizon. Most people are making financial decisions based on how something feels right now, or at best, what their situation will look like in the next few months. They're optimizing for the present. They buy the car they can technically afford today. They take on the mortgage that stretches them because it's the house they want now. They delay investing because they plan to start next year when things settle down. Things never quite settle down. Truly wealthy people think in decades automatically. They ask different questions. Not can I afford this, but where will I be financially in 12 years if I make this choice instead of that one? This shift in time horizon changes almost every financial decision they make. Here's why this matters mathematically. If you invest $1,000 today and earn an average of 8% per year, that $1,000 becomes $2,159 in 10 years. In 20 years, it becomes $4,661. In 30 years, without you doing anything else, it becomes $10,063. The money more than doubled twice without any additional effort from you. The only input required was time. Okay, most people understand this in theory. Wealthy people actually make decisions as if it's true. They also apply this thinking to their habits, not just their money. They exercise consistently, not because they'll feel better tomorrow, but because they're investing in mobility and health at 65 and 75. They read not because it's immediately useful, but because accumulated knowledge compounds the same way capital does. The 10-year version of your life is built almost entirely from the small decisions you're making right now. Wealthy people seem to understand that viscerally in a way that shapes everything they do. Habit 2, they treat their financial life like a business. Most people run their personal finances the way you might manage a loose pile of receipts. Money comes in, money goes out, and somewhere around the end of the month, there's either a little left over or there isn't. The process is mostly reactive. Decisions get made based on what's in the checking account at that moment. Quietly wealthy people treat their financial life like a business they are responsible for operating well. There are income streams, there are expenses categorized and monitored, there is a budget that functions more like a financial plan. Not a restriction, but a map. There are targets. There are regular reviews, even if informal, where the numbers are looked at honestly. The specific behavior this produces is worth noting. They know their numbers. If you ask a quietly wealthy person what their monthly fixed expenses are, they can tell you within a reasonable margin. They know roughly what they spend on food, housing, transportation, and discretionary categories. Not because they track every dollar obsessively, but because they've looked at the data enough times that it stopped being a surprise. Most people are shocked by their own spending. Quietly wealthy people are not. They removed the element of surprise by choosing to look. And once you look honestly, the decisions that follow become much more straightforward. They also think about income the way a business owner thinks about revenue, not as something that just arrives, but as something that can be built, diversified, and grown over time. And the idea of having only one source of income feels as risky to them as a business with a single customer. Habit 3. They almost never try to impress anyone financially. This one is harder to observe directly, but once you know what to look for, it becomes obvious. There is a type of person who mentions money in almost every conversation without seeming to realize it. The price of their renovation comes up naturally. The cost of a vacation appears within the first 10 minutes of describing it. The make and year of a new car is stated before anyone asks. These people are not bad people. They are simply caught in a social dynamic that is quietly expensive. When your sense of status depends on visible signals, you are forced to constantly update and maintain those signals. That process is very costly. Quietly wealthy people have largely stepped off this treadmill, either by choice or by personality. They don't mention what they paid for things, and they don't name drop their financial wins. They aren't performing anything for you. Behavioral economists refer to something called the hedonic treadmill, the observation that people return to a relatively stable level of satisfaction regardless of positive financial changes because their baseline expectations keep rising with their circumstances. The implication for spending is that buying things for status or social comparison produces temporary satisfaction at best because the comparison constantly resets. People who don't need to impress are freed from this cycle entirely. They buy things because those things are useful or genuinely enjoyable, not because of how they register to an external audience. That distinction applied to every purchase over 30 years produces a dramatically different financial outcome. Habit 4. They invest in expertise rather than guessing. Here is something you will notice about quietly wealthy people when you pay close attention. They are not the ones giving you stock tips at dinner parties. They are not excited about a cryptocurrency they read about on a forum at 11 p.m. They are not convinced they have found something the market hasn't priced in yet. What they are doing quietly and without fanfare is paying professionals for legitimate expertise and then following that expertise consistently. A good fee-only financial advisor, one who is legally required to act in your interest and doesn't earn commissions on products they sell you, can easily be worth 10 to 20 times their annual cost in tax optimization, estate planning, and portfolio structure alone. A good accountant who understands the tax code as it applies to your specific situation can identify deductions, timing strategies, and structural decisions that reduce your tax liability by thousands of dollars each year. An estate planning attorney can ensure that decades of accumulated wealth passes to the right people under the right conditions, instead of being partially consumed by a process that could have been avoided with a few $100s of legal work done in advance. None of these investments feel exciting. None of them produce a story you'd tell at a party, but the financial return on each of them is concrete and, in many cases, immediate. Quietly wealthy people understand that there are areas where professional expertise genuinely produces better outcomes than self-direction, and they invest in that expertise without resentment. They are not trying to figure out the tax code themselves. They hired someone who knows it. Habit 5. They have a different relationship with boredom. This one doesn't get discussed enough. The entire consumer economy is built at a deep structural level on the proposition that boredom is a problem that products can solve. You're bored. Here is a streaming service. You're restless. Here is a new clothing item. You're seeking novelty. Here is a restaurant, a gadget, a weekend trip. The machinery of modern commerce is extraordinarily efficient at converting restlessness into spending. Quietly wealthy people have in most cases, developed a different relationship with downtime. They are comfortable doing nothing in particular. They read without a specific destination. They walk without their headphones. They sit with their own thoughts in ways that most people in the modern world find increasingly difficult. This has a direct financial consequence. A significant percentage of discretionary spending in most people's lives is boredom spending. Purchases that exist not because of a genuine need or even a genuine desire, but because the discomfort of an idle moment needed to be filled with something. Subscription services that nobody watches, clothes bought without a specific occasion, restaurants chosen because it was 6:30 and nobody felt like cooking. Quietly, wealthy people don't spend a lot of money solving for boredom because boredom doesn't distress them. They can sit with it, they can move through it. This makes them immune to an enormous category of unintentional spending that most people don't even track as a category. Habit 6. They make their financial decisions in advance. There is a well-established finding in behavioral psychology called decision fatigue. When you are asked to make a large number of decisions over the course of a day, the quality of your decision-making declines over time. This effect is particularly relevant for financial decisions, which are often made in states of stress, emotional activation, or simple tiredness. Quietly wealthy people have largely automated or pre-decided their most important financial behaviors so that they do not need to rely on willpower or good judgment in the moment. Their savings and investment contributions are automatic. The money moves on a schedule that doesn't require a monthly decision. And the question, should I save money this month, has already been answered at a system level and doesn't need to be relitigated. They have predetermined rules for categories of spending that tend to produce regret, a waiting period for non-essential purchases above a certain amount, a spending limit on a category they know they're prone to overindulge. They have an investment policy statement, formal or informal, that tells them exactly what to do when markets drop so that they're not making that decision for the first time in a moment of fear. The goal of this pre-commitment is not rigidity. It is removing the worst case version of themselves from the decision chain. The person who is exhausted on a Friday evening and sees something they want is not the person who should be making a consequential financial decision. The best version of themselves already made the relevant decisions on a Tuesday morning when they were calm and thinking clearly. Habit 7. They pay attention to what they actually value. This habit sounds almost too simple, but in practice, it is one of the most differentiating behaviors of people who have built real wealth. At some point, either early or late, depending on the person, quietly wealthy people went through the exercise of identifying what they actually genuinely value, not what they're supposed to value, not what their social group signals is important, not what the Instagram algorithm has determined should matter to them, what they specifically actually care about. This is harder than it sounds. Most people are operating with a set of values they've absorbed from their environment rather than ones they've deliberately chosen. They value status markers because status markers were visible around them growing up. And they value certain kinds of travel because those trips are presented as meaningful experiences by the media they consume. They believe they value certain material things when what they're actually responding to is a manufactured association between those things and an emotional state they want. Quietly wealthy people who have done this audit find something interesting on the other side. Most of what they genuinely value doesn't cost very much. It costs time or presence or craft or relationships, but not much money. A genuinely good meal cooked at home. A conversation that goes somewhere interesting, a long walk in good weather, work that actually matters to them. When you know what you actually value, spending on everything else stops making emotional sense. The money that would have gone to things that were filling the wrong kind of hole stays in the account. Over time, the account grows in a way that eventually supports the things that genuinely matter, and that process is the opposite of deprivation. Habit 8. They understand risk in a way most people don't. Most people's relationship with financial risk is primarily emotional. They feel anxiety about stock market volatility because prices are moving in ways they can't predict. They feel safer with money sitting in a low interest savings account because the number doesn't go down. They are uncomfortable holding positions during a market correction because the paper losses register as real losses even before anything is sold. Quietly wealthy people have a fundamentally different framework for risk, and it produces completely different behavior in practice. The insight that most distinguishes their thinking is this: not taking risk is also a risk. A savings account that earns 0.5% while inflation runs at 3% is losing purchasing power at 2.5% per year. Like, that loss is quiet and invisible and doesn't show up on a statement in red, but it is real. The money that sits in cash for 10 years out of fear of the market often does more damage to long-term wealth than the volatility the person was trying to avoid. They also understand the difference between volatility and permanent loss. A stock market decline of 30% is uncomfortable on paper, but if the underlying business is healthy and you don't sell, nothing permanent has happened. The loss only becomes real if you convert it into cash by panicking. Permanently losing money requires either the complete and total collapse of the underlying asset or selling at the wrong time. Both of these outcomes are largely within your control if you own diversified, high-quality assets and have a time horizon of more than a decade. And this is why quietly wealthy people don't make dramatic moves during market downturns. They already thought through the relevant scenarios before the money was invested. The plan already accounts for volatility. There is nothing new to decide. Habit 9. They are genuinely patient about things most people can't wait for. The final habit is perhaps the most foundational because it underlies almost all of the others. Quietly, wealthy people are comfortable with very slow processes producing very large results. Consider compound interest. A 25-year-old who invests $500 per month at an average return of 8% per year and never stops will have approximately $1.75 million at age 65. The same person who starts at 35 and invests the same amount every month will have approximately $745,000. The person who starts at 45 will have around $294,000. The difference between the first and last scenario is not income. It is not intelligence or luck or market timing. It is a 20-year head start and the patience to leave the investment alone. Most people understand this math intellectually. Like, quietly wealthy people make decisions as if the math is actually happening, because for them it is. They don't get frustrated that their portfolio hasn't done anything exciting in 6 months. They aren't comparing themselves to someone they read about who made an enormous return on a single investment. They are watching something slow grow, and they're fine with that because they understand what it becomes. This patience extends to their careers, their skills, their relationships, and their businesses. They are not looking for shortcuts. They are not convinced that someone else has found a faster path. They are executing a process that they believe in over a time horizon that most people can't quite hold in their minds, and they are quietly comfortable doing that for years on end. What connects all 9 go back to the woman walking her dog on Tuesday morning. The worn-out running shoes, the paid-off Honda, the coffee brewed at home. What you're looking at is someone who thinks in decades, runs her financial life like a business, has no interest in impressing you, invests in expertise, doesn't spend money to solve boredom, has automated her most important habits, has done the work of figuring out what she actually values, understands risk correctly, and has the patience to let a slow process do what slow processes do. None of these behaviors are extraordinary. None of them require a high income to begin, although most of them become more powerful as income increases. Each of them is available to almost anyone who decides to take them seriously. The gap between people who build real wealth and people who look like they have it is not intelligence or income or luck in most cases. It is a set of habits applied consistently over time without requiring external validation. The woman with the Honda already has more freedom than most people on her street will ever experience. She just doesn't tell anyone about it. If you found this valuable, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what we cover next. All right, I'll see you in the next one.